First and foremost, you just make sure the floor is flat and even. Doesn't necessarily have to be level, but it's got to be flat and even. Don't think that the Premier or the sound block will take up those little undulations. They will not. If it's not perfect, get yourself a bag of self-leveling screed, put that on, let it dry for 24 hours, and then your floor is guaranteed to be even and flat. Number 2, obviously it must be dry. Number 3, it's got to be really clean. And I mean clean, not just swept. Vacuuming is the way. Now that we've established that the floor is flat and even and clean and dry, we can commence the actual laying. But first, let's put on some knee pads. Because unless you want your knees to look like goat's knees, of goats from outer Mongolia, you don't put these on. The next step is to lay the Premier. Now, Premier consists of high density polyethylene with an erythene layer on top of it. The entire thing is about 2 millimeters thick only. The reason it is white is because it is virgin material. That means it's not a recycled plastic like the blue one or the yellow one or the black one that you get in the market. It's this white one with our guarantee printed on the back. It means it's completely waterproof, and we will guarantee that. It means we could make a plastic bag out of it, fill it with water, and no water would leak out to the bottom. Now you can see that there is an overlap here like this. And that means that we have to overlap the material by about this much. What I then do is I use a bit of buff tape to tape it up. Now the buff tape is there not so much as to waterproof it, but to make sure you can walk on it. Otherwise it slips and slides in and out all the time. I just want to digress for one moment, because you do have an option on the Premier. You could use our sound block. The sound block comes in a packet of 5 square meters, and it is this kind of an underfelt looking like stuff, but it isn't really, thinly compressed to 2 millimeters, and once again a layer of plastic of high density polyethylene or HDPE. This goes below and the sound block goes on top. It does make walking on the floor a lot quieter. Never, never, never do you lay the sound block and the Premier at the same time. That must never happen. It is always either the Premier or the sound block. Okay, so let's go back to laying our floor. Premier is down on the floor. You start with your first board with a tongue against the wall. You have to leave a 10 millimeter gap between the wall and the ELF product. That is so that the product can breathe and expand and contract as the climate inside the room changes. And remember, we sell these spacers. Those get placed between the first board and the wall. And let's put those in right now. There we have it. So the first plank is laid down. Now we attach the second plank to the first one down the row. You've got to be very accurate here. Even if you have 1/100th of a millimeter out of line, here where my left thumb is, you won't be able to lock in the next lot. And you see the joint is over here. So as I mentioned in the layout, we can't have the second joint of the second row line up with this joint. So we have to start off with an offcut here so that we can get an overlap. So this is where we cut our first plank. So we're going to mark the first plank roughly halfway, which is about 65 of 1.3, roughly. Now here we have this fancy guillotine, which you can rent from CTM. Most of the CTMs will have one for you to rent. You simply place it in like that, press it down. We now start putting the second row together. Note that I haven't clipped it into the first one yet, because as we mentioned in the theory, we clip the whole second row together before we clip that into the first one. We clip the whole of the second row carefully together, making sure that it lines up perfectly. Now we can use the offcut on this end over here to line up with that side of the room. And there's the 3 planks together. Now can you see that we've put the second row completely clipped against each other on the short lengths, and we're now going to pick up the whole row and clip it into the first row, somewhat like this. Tap it in like this. It's a very nice clean job, as you can see. No mortar or grout or dust or cutting that makes dust. Just make sure that before you clip anything in, one into the next, make sure that these grooves are completely clean. The best way to do it is just to give them a little blow job like this. If you see any dirt, like that. And so we carry on row after row until we've done the whole room. Simple, isn't it? And it looks fantastically warm already. Right, we've come to the other end of the room and the last plank is in. And as you can see, we have a gap left. Now if you remember from our layout, we said we cannot have less than 50 millimeters in the length of a plank. And we've got more than 100 here, I'm sure. This is 12.5 centimeters, and we now, because we have still to leave a gap on this side, we will cut the plank to 11.5 centimeters. So let's go and prepare our planks. Now remember guys, there was a gap of about 12.5 centimeters between the wall and the last board. So we have to cut a piece that'll fit in there of 11.5 centimeters because we need that gap in the end, remember, between the wall and the plank. So 11.5 here, and the other side of the plank 11.5 there. Then I just use another board as a ruler. It just makes it so much easier, less tools on site. I line the 2 dots up, and with a Koki I draw a line, and this is the line along which I'm going to cut the board. Right, we've now cut our 3 pieces that need to be fitted in here. We simply lay them down, clip them together like we've always had, like we've done all the big ones. 1, 2, and number 3. We then pick up all 3 and move them into position like this. Lock them in, press them down, and that completes our installation of the boards. Now we still have the gap, so next we're going to do skirtings and trims.